Hello everyone, it's Taylor, and today I'm here to take you through my eyeshadow collection. There is not much of an intro for this video because I have a lot of eyeshadow, so we are just going to jump right in. First I'm going to take you through my pre-made palettes, and then we will go on to Z palettes. I'm starting off with the Anastasia Beverly Hills Modern Renaissance palette, and if you haven't already seen it, which I assume most people have, this is the Modern Renaissance here. I will say the other day when I pulled this palette out, oh, now it's not happening. I guess that's a good thing. The bottom totally disconnected from the back of the packaging here. Now it seems, oh, there it goes. So for a $42 palette, that's super annoying, and I wouldn't expect that to happen, but it did, so I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to keep this palette like this or if I'm going to have to depot it. I have two of the Jaclyn Hill Vault collection palettes. I originally had all four and then decluttered two of them because I just didn't see myself getting use out of them. I have the Ring the Alarm, which is the super warm situation here. And then I also have the more purpley palette, which is the Bling Boss. And I will say I've never used either of these palettes, so I cannot speak to their quality. I didn't get them too long ago, so I need to start incorporating them into my makeup routine. Too Faced is a heavy hitter in my eye palette collection. I have the Sweet Peach. As you can see, a couple of the pans are empty. I didn't want to waste my time with those shades, so I just went ahead and depotted them. And then I have Hit Pan on, I think, one or maybe Baby Pan on that one, but for sure one pan. I also have the original Chocolate Bar palette here. Same situation where I have gone ahead and depotted that one because I knew I wasn't going to use it. I did also Hit Pan on a couple shades in this palette. It's gotten quite a bit of love from me. Continuing on with Too Faced, I have three of the 9-pan palettes. I have the Natural Eyes, a very cool toned, neutral toned palette. I also have the Peanut Butter and Jelly palette, and this is just like a warm toned girl's paradise with a few pops of purple. This purple on the under eye, like just a full like under eye statement pop, is absolutely gorgeous. When it came out, I also went ahead and picked up the Peanut Butter and Honey palette. I don't think it's near as good as the Peanut Butter and Jelly palette, but it's still such a beautiful shade range. I would like to get more use out of this palette as well this year because these sort of like pinky shades are really up my alley right now. And last of the Too Faced palettes, you've already seen this if you've watched any videos on my channel, but this is the Tickled Peach that I was gifted for Christmas. Beautiful, super versatile, surprisingly, for the size of it, and I imagine it's going to be a great travel palette for me this year. Continuing on with the pre-made palettes, I have the Carly BH Cosmetics Carly Bible Deluxe Edition. I will say that I don't get a ton of use out of this palette, but I would like to start incorporating it more into my, everyday makeup routine. I have two Violet Voss palettes. I have the Laura Lee collaboration here. It's just a really nice range of shades, some warm, some cool, and you can create lots of really pretty looks from this palette. Next up, the Violet Voss Holy Grail palette is also really great. It is another warm girl's heaven. I absolutely love, especially this little pinky red quad down in this area. It's just absolutely fantastic, and I think that the Violet Voss formula quality is really nice as well. I also have the Lorac, sorry about the reflection, the Lorac Mega Pro 3. It is like, it's just like everything you could potentially need in a palette here. you've got a lot of basic shades, but so many variations and tones and depths that you can really create a crap ton of looks just from this one palette. And speaking of a warm girl's heaven, this is just the most beautiful thing in the whole world. This is the Morphe 3502. I absolutely hate how gigantic the Morphe packaging is, which is why this palette doesn't get more use, but it is absolutely like some of the shade staples in my collection, and the reds and oranges are just so pigmented. They create the most gorgeous, like, height of the summer red, orange, smoky eye look. I absolutely love this palette. We zoomed pretty fast through the pre-made palettes, which was my plan because my lipstick collection got crazy long, so I don't want this to be as long. If you want any of my thoughts on any of the particular palettes that I went through, feel free to ask me in the comments and I'll absolutely let you know some feedback that I have for those specific palettes. On to Z palettes. Again, if you've watched any of my videos, you will have seen this situation here, which is my Life palette for all intents and purposes. These are the eyeshadows that I'm using every single day on a daily basis. I've got some ColourPop in here, I've got some Makeup Geek, MAC, and Morphe shadows. And I am going to film a separate video breaking down each of these shades one by one, so look out for that in the near future. Next up, I did go ahead and depot my Morphe and Jaclyn Hill palette. This is in the white sort of cardboard packaging, and while that packaging is beautiful, it again is just so large, and I really did find that depotting them helps me use up the colors a little bit more. So for example, this shade here is in my Life palette right now, and I'm just able to kind of swap out shades here and there as I go. I did declutter two of the darker shades down here. They were more of like the deep brown and like deep purpley brown shades. I just won't get use out of those, so I went ahead and got rid of them. Speaking of bulky packaging, the Natasha Denona, the original palettes that came out from Natasha Denona, I think it's like the purple palette and then the green brown, something like that. Purple, blue, green, brown, something along those lines. I found that I was never using my green-brown palette, and I had to come to terms with the fact that it was because of the packaging. And getting rid of that packaging was incredibly difficult for me. I loved that like Natasha Denona debossing that's on the outer packaging, and it was tough. But I came to the realization that I would use these shades more if they were depotted. So I went ahead and depotted them into this Z palette. And I feel like this metallic Z palette fits these shades perfectly. So I'm just getting much better vibes from this entire palette with it depotted into this sparkly Z palette. Next up, I have another Z palette of depotted palette eyeshadows. These 3 rows are all various eyeshadows from the ColourPop, Yes Please, and Dream Street palettes. And then down here, I just have a few rando neutral shades. There are like neutral shades in kind of all of my Z palettes because I have so many individual neutral eyeshadows. It's a little bit bonkers. This palette gives me so much joy to look at, but it's, I'm gonna be honest, not a palette I reach for a ton. These are my greens, little bit of blue in there, some burgundy purples, and then again, some rollover neutrals because they couldn't all fit in my big neutral palette. By the way, this is all individual eyeshadows from ColourPop, Morphe, and Makeup Geek. The big kahuna here. The ring light is reflecting, so I'm trying not to hold it up for very long, but this is a gigantic, heavy palette, and for very good reason, because there are a lot of eyeshadows in here. So it's a double-sided palette where I have all of my depotted Juvia's Place eyeshadows. I think I had 3 or 4 Juvia's Place palettes, and I feel like Juvia's Place does themselves a very large disservice. Their palettes are unique and interesting looking, and their formulas are fantastic, but their color stories are so bad. Like, I think the Warrior palette is the only palette that they've put out that has a very cohesive, inspiring color palette. Everything else, I'm like, oh, that's a really pretty pop of pink with a green next to it, and then a neutral brown, and then you've got a red, and I'm like, what the hell am I supposed to do with this palette? I just don't understand. So I went ahead and depotted all of the Juvia's Place palettes that I had, and this is what I ended up keeping. And most of it I feel like is from the Masquerade palette, and then some of it is from the Deuce palette, and then again, rollover neutrals down there. On the flip side, no pun intended, I have a crap ton of individual eyeshadows. And this here is Morphe. This is not ColourPop. I don't have any ColourPop in here. So it's all Morphe and Makeup Geek in here. Very nice. I love individual eyeshadows. My cousin actually told me yesterday, because we were talking about makeup, she said, I feel like you're more of an individual shadow person. And I absolutely 100% agree with that. I do have a ton of eyeshadow palettes, but I am definitely drawn to mixing and matching, customizing my own palettes to where if I'm feeling green for a certain month, I can load up my everyday palette with greens. Or if I'm feeling pink, I can load it up with pinks and purples like I have now. I really just like the freedom to swap things in and out. I almost forgot about individual eyeshadows and eyeshadow duos, pigments, those kinds of things. So we're gonna go through those really quickly. I did forget my ColourPop individual shade in Lala in my everyday makeup basket. I'm not going to run all the way across the house to go get that, so that's in my collection. On the subject of ColourPop, I also have this ColourPop Couche, I believe it is. Yes, Couche. It is one of the most gorgeous, like, cool silver shadows ever. And this is like special packaging because I didn't get it on the first time it came out. I ended up picking it up when they re-released it in this black packaging. I also have this beautiful sort of rich brown in the shade Heartthrob. It is from the Glamour Dolls and Lisa Frank collaboration, so it's just this really cute little packaging. I actually got this at like a little white elephant thing for Christmas, and I haven't really used it. Actually, I don't know if I've ever used it, but it's freaking fabulous. I have the NARS Duo in Isolde, and this color here, just like, I don't use this one a ton, but this one gives like all the feels. It's just the perfect metallic amber color, and I seriously wish that NARS was still cruelty-free because I would repurchase this for the rest of my life, but they're not, so I won't. I also have 2 of the L'Oreal Infallible pigments. This reddy color here in, what is this color called? Glistening Garnet, and then this one here in, I believe, Amber Rush, which is a super popular one, but these are just really nice. They take forever to go through, so I may eventually have to declutter them out of my collection before I can even finish them. My 3 MAC pigments that I own, I just love MAC pigments. Again, I wish MAC was cruelty-free, but they're not. I have the shade Tan, which is just like the perfect everyday, like, bronzy, I don't even know how, the perfect like summer eye. If you just want to do very minimal work in the crease, just like a nice transition color, and then slap this bad boy on all over the lid, underneath the eye. It's like just it's a perfect summer glam in my opinion. Then I also have this shade in Heritage Rouge, which is very dark and probably my least used of the pigments, but it's still very pretty. And then next up is the pigment in Rose. And I may end up decluttering this actually because there's a shade from the Jaclyn Hill palette. It's actually in my Life palette currently. That's sort of like this pink with gold reflect. And it's dang near a dupe of this color. I think maybe it was even created to be a dupe of that color. So I may end up decluttering that. We'll see. Finishing up my eyeshadow collection, I have some melt shadows here. I used to have the neon stack. What's that stack called? I think it's called neon? Radioactive? Maybe radioactive. And then I also have the dark matter stack, and I have combined them here to keep the following shades. Let me go through them for you. The absolute best shade ever from Melt is the shade Blur. It's just like the perfect sort of neutral to slightly warm transition shade. It's absolutely stunning. Then you have this guy, Unseen, also from the Dark Matter stack. Again, just another perfect brown shade, just slightly darker. So you would almost do the Blur as your transition, Unseen as like your little bit of a deeper crease shade. And then we also have this guy here in Enigma. Holy cannoli, this is just the most beautiful deep burgundy red shade and so pigmented. It gives me all the feels. Moving on to my shadows from the Radioactive stack, I have this guy here in Radon. And this is a little scary in the pan, I'll say that, but when you blow it out with a crease brush, it just gives you the nicest amount of like peachy, orangey warmth, and it doesn't show up this like too crazy pigmented. Maybe I can do a look with this color if anyone's interested to show how it actually looks on the eye, because it's very misleading in the pan. Next up is Neon from the same Radioactive stack, and the star of the show here. Speaking of giving me all the feels, this pink shade is just like so beautiful. So that's it from my Melt shadows. Let me go ahead and get this. And this little mirror is surprisingly handy too. I don't really use it to do my eyeshadow, but if I ever have it handy, it's great for putting on lipstick. So I love this packaging as well. So that was my entire eyeshadow collection. Pre-made palettes, Z palettes, and like individual duos, pigments, those types of things. I do apologize for having to rush through this, but I want people to be able to stay interested in my videos, and doing like a 40-minute video of my eyeshadow collections didn't really seem like the best thing to do. So like I said, if you have questions on any of the products that I showed, if you want to know more about specific palettes or eyeshadows, just go ahead and leave it down in the comments below, and I will certainly answer any questions you have there. And if you're still here right now, thank you so much for sticking with me. Thank you for hanging through a long collection video, or what I'm sure is to be a long collection video. And until next time, I will see you later.